we're going to talk about energy, we're going to talk about heat and light and all sorts of things that are, you know, absolutely key to your life and your lifestyle and the way that we all live. I've got Tom Greatrex here, Chief Executive of the Nuclear Industry Association. Tom, thanks for coming in.
Good morning.
We keep hearing, don't we, about these great plans that the government's got for putting pylons all over the country, for creating the sort of the wherewithal for us to no longer need coal. We're not going to mine it anymore. We're not going to roast it anymore. We're not going to any longer look for natural gas in the North Sea. Instead, we're going to have renewable energy, and it's all going to be great. Except, apparently, we might be having a few blackouts as well.
Well, the issue is when you've got a system that's dominated by wind particularly, but also to some extent solar, the output from those sources is variable. Right. So you get some days where you get a lot, other days like yesterday where you get almost none. And the problem with that is if you haven't got something else on the system, you get what we had yesterday, which was National Grid or the system operator issuing a warning saying we're getting really close to running out of electricity and not being able to meet our demand.
Right. And that would mean what for ordinary people? Well,
what happens firstly is it means that the price goes up because you know, the gas that you're burning to try and fill the gap, the price of that goes up because demand goes up. Yeah. It means we're importing more electricity.
And currently, where is that gas coming from? Is it coming from the North Sea or is it coming from abroad?
So,
Qatar?
You know, it's internationally traded. Some comes from Qatar, some comes from Norway, some is domestic, but it's less than half of the gas we use now is domestic just because of the profile of the North Sea running out. So, you know, all those factors come into account. But we were importing a lot of electricity yesterday. Ironically enough, most of it nuclear from France, because that's where the spare capacity was. But it doesn't really help our energy resilience or energy security if what we're having to do is rely on electricity from elsewhere.
Well, surely the point of Ed Miliband's policy is that we become more self-reliant, but we're only becoming more self-reliant, as you say, on renewables. We're not self-reliant on fossil fuels. We're not self-reliant on nuclear, for example.
Well, what we need is you need to have a mix. You need a mix that gives you the resilience for when you don't get very much wind. You know, and you need that. If you want to do that in a way that's energy secure. Well, it happens, and particularly, I mean, we're just at the start of the winter. It's going to be a bit warmer later this week. But, you know, going into the winter, quite often in the winter, you get high-pressure weather systems sitting over Western Europe, which means it's not very windy anywhere. When it's cold, you know, you get 10, 12 days of that. You know, you really need something else to be able to power your system, and that's why you need something. That's why nuclear helps, because it's low carbon. It's energy secure in the sense that it's domestic. The price is very predictable because the fuel input is a small part of it. But you need to have the capacity there.
And is it more reliable, would you say, nuclear?
Well, it provides constant power. So in that sense, it is. It provides you, you know, 24/7, 365. Sizewell B, which is refuelling at the moment, just went off this week to refuel for a couple of weeks, has been running for 510 days consecutively, delivering 90% capacity. So that's the scale of it, and that's what it brings to your system. That, alongside other things, help to, you know, deal with these issues of all the challenges you've got to run a system. But if we don't have that capacity, we're going to be importing more gas, it's going to be more expensive, and we're going to find there will be times, as with yesterday, where the capacity margin gets very, very tight. And if it gets too tight and goes the other way, that's when you get issues with supply. It seems mad, doesn't it?
I was listening to Julie Hartley-Brewer talking to somebody yesterday about this whole situation of energy. I think it was somebody from the IEA. And she was like, you know, I don't think even Ed Miliband really believes what he's telling us, that we're going to be, you know, completely and utterly sort of carbon neutral by 2030 because we're going to have all these renewables and we're going to be able to phase out natural gas. We're going to phase out all fossil fuels. It's not really doable, is it?
Well, phasing out fossil fuels for all but a tiny margin of your capacity is doable, but to do it, you need to make sure you've got a range of technologies that counteract the issues that we saw yesterday. So you can't just do it with one source alone, and you've got to get on and do it. You know, it's all very well talking about we want to have more new nuclear, we want to have more renewables.
How long would it take, for example, to build? I mean, we famously know about Nick Clegg saying in 2010, no, we don't want any nuclear because that would be a nightmare. It won't be ready till 2023. We're now in 2024, and we could have had, what, 5 or maybe 10 nuclear plants if we'd built them?
If we got on with it. You know, back in like 2008, 29, 2010, when we first started, we need new nuclear, and we built what we said we were going to build, and had 16 gigawatts now, we would not be in this situation. Prices would be lower, energy would be more secure, would be less
and more domestically controlled.
Absolutely.
Is there a hangover from people kind of about, you know, I don't know, the China syndrome and, you know, Chernobyl and all of that? Are people still kind of frightened of nuclear, do you think?
Well, I think less and less people are, because they much more appreciate the reality of it as opposed to some of the things that are said. There is a very
So why can't we just build some more of them then?
Well, we need to get on and build some more of them. The new government has said they're going to, but what we really need is decisions to enable that to happen. So they need to make a decision on Sizewell C, which has been hanging around for a little while. They need to decide which small modular reactors we're going to build and where. Get on with it, start the process and actually get moving now, which means in 10 years' time we won't be in the position we're in today. If we don't do anything other than talk about it for 5 years, then we're going to be in a worse position.
Right. And if, say, things had tipped over the edge yesterday and we had gone into sort of a blackout scenario, what does that look like? Is that a national blackout? Is it regional? How does that work?
Well, it would more likely be you'd have brownouts, which are in certain areas you'd have really constrained supply and maybe have some.
I mean, I lived in New York for 10 years back in the 80s and 90s, and that used to happen on quite a regular basis in the summer, particularly because air conditioning machines were on and all that kind of thing. And suddenly, sort of the bottom of southeastern Manhattan would just be brownout. Parts of the Upper East Side would suddenly have no power, and it was terrifying.
Yeah, and that's what can happen if you don't have enough resilience in your system to be able to deal with situations where you've got a higher demand than you might otherwise predict, because either it's not very windy or it's very cold or it's very warm. Because increasingly for cooling, for air conditioning, for running data centres, for example, use a lot of power.
Well, these data centres that they want to build apparently take an awful lot of power, don't they?
They take a huge
and I was
amount.
listening again to Julia yesterday, and they were saying that if they want to build pylons and have these sort of miles and miles of cables, companies and factories that build cables need even more power to make the cables.
Yeah, it's all interconnected, and it all comes down to the fact that our energy infrastructure in this country is old and creaking.
Yeah, like everything else.
Well, like a lot of other things, there's a lot to do.
In terms of the blackout prevention system, such as it is, I mean, is that sort of work? Is that something that you feel confident is going to kind of alert you early enough to make sure that if there is a problem, we don't have, a massive blackout across the country?
Well, we fortunately haven't been in a position where we've had blackouts in this country for a very, very long period of time.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember the ones we had in the 70s. When I used to sit around at home. We had 1 hour of electricity in the evening to cook. And then we'd all sit around with candles talking. And
the problem is, with the greatest respect, Mike, not enough people remember that. To know actually how complacent people get about relying on.
I tell my kids and they're like, what? And I was like, we just had no electricity. And we're like, what did you do? We were like, we just talked to them. It was good preparation for doing a talk show because we didn't have anything else to do. Literally, couldn't even play Monopoly. You couldn't see. Incredible. Tom, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We must talk again. Tom Greatrix there, Chief Executive of Nuclear Industry Association. Surely it's time to build more nuclear energy plants, isn't it?